Do you sometimes wonder who is the best personality for your business? As a business owner, one of our challenges is the hiring process to match our vision, to match our leadership, to match our culture in our brand. So today we decided we want to introduce a concept to some of you guys that would be very, very helpful. It's called the DISC profile. The model was created for corporations to use in order to analyze the employee personality at work. That way, they can maximize on that employee potential, increase production, elevate performance, and everybody's happy at the end of the day. So, we thought we'll share this tool with you today, and I decided to invite my co-host and my previous guest, Dr. Ehab Abdahim, since we are partners in our company, in our brand, the three practices, and also we are working side by side, advocating for and marketing our new endeavor, which is the Greenwood Dental Franchise Group. So welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Slava the Jordanian. I'm your host, STJ. Allow me to explain the DISC. The DISC is basically the four most common personalities or characteristic of the human race. And they are divided into four categories: extroverted, introverted, task-oriented, or people-oriented. And depending on the task at hand or the position of employment in your company or in your small business, you need to take a look at that specific personality to match that position, to match the duties, and to match the responsibilities of that personality. So let's dive into it. We want to take a micro view of what that means and what does that looks like as a process. So we own, as you know, a dental practice, and dentistry requires certain personalities because dentistry, just like so many businesses out there, they deal with the public and they deal with the public demand and the public expectations. Our brand is built on the patient experience and also the team experience. So we spend about 80% of our time as business owners, CEOs, VPs of operations, managing expectations, whether patient expectations or team expectations. It's a juggle at the end of the day, and it can be exhausting and it can be very, very time consuming. So we do incorporate these tools in order to help us navigate through the process of matching up personalities to that position that we are requiring or looking for. So let's start with Dr. Ehab Abdahim, and I want to ask you, how is your experience since we have trained you with the DISC profile tool, and whether the 20 years of experience in semiconductor, did you guys learn about it or you just learned it in dentistry?
Thanks, Dr. Slava. Thank you for having me on the show again. It's great to be here. And yes, so in the semiconductor industry, it's not really, we're not trained in the DISC. We're just trained in how to kind of communicate with other personalities, or mostly other scientists and engineers from within the U.S. and abroad. So, for instance, when you're working with the Japanese, you have to kind of communicate with them a certain way versus how you communicate with people in the United States. So we are trained in DISC, but we were not given the test, the DISC test, the DISC test. We were just trained in how to deal with these different personalities from these different countries. Now, once I joined Greenwood Dental, I said to myself, okay, well, for example, if you're dealing with Germans, they're high D personalities typically. So we were not given that disc profile of these countries or these scientists. We had to learn it just within the company and how we communicate. So we're taught how to communicate basically by management. When we first join, when we first join the company, we're taught by management how to deal with and communicate with people from all around the world. Now, these people are different personalities. Like, for instance, I would say the Japanese are more of the SC personality, and we're not told SC, but we're given instructions and guidance on how to communicate with them. So again, we're taught this, but not with the DISC letters. We're not given that information, but we're taught how to deal with these personalities. So it's kind of, hopefully it makes sense to you what I'm saying.
So let me just clarify for our viewers and our listeners what the SC means. So an S stands for steadiness. An S personality is very introverted and people-oriented. That personality does not like change, or if they would change anything, whether they change their mindset, their lifestyle, their career, their home, their location, they want as minimal change as possible, very steady, like baby steps, in order for them. And those are really, really hard to make a decision. When you combine that personality with the other characteristic, which is introverted, task-oriented, those are, think about them, the analytical minds, the engineering mind. Those personalities, they go through so much analysis of the data you give them, and that's how they process the world around them in order for them to make a decision for that change, for the next step. So they welcome change, but as long as it is calculated change, it has to match the data that they process, or the data that they end up with after processing the world or life around them. So what you're saying is, when you are, as a scientist, dealing with, you're a multicultural scientist, right? You're an Egyptian American. So you're a little bit seasoned when it comes to cultural adaptability. So dealing with the Japanese, which is the first time as a Japanese scientist, because you guys all do the same thing, but with a different approach, or express yourself in different personalities. So that language is a little bit different. But did you relate to their culture and their approach, because they introverted on both aspects of that, because they are introverted, people oriented, they're very generous, they're very welcoming, but also they are introverted, task oriented. And that means that, you guys probably did not get the answer as quick as you wanted. They had to process everything. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. When you sent data to the Japanese, you're not going to get a reply or a question or anything until they kind of sift through the data, process the data. So you might get something, a couple days later. But they do some, again, I don't want to say like all the time they get back to you a couple days. They might see something that kind of jumps out at them, and they'll immediately contact you. Something as easy as, there's no data attached to this email. Can you please send it? Something like that. They would get back to us right away. But if it's the actual data and it looks pretty normal, they're going to go through and look at it, digest it. And if it aligns with what they expect, we won't hear anything from them. But if something is off, they'll get to us and ask us some questions. So the way they do it is different than the way the Germans would do it, for instance. And again, we're not kind of knocking any culture or anything like that, but this is just their approach in general, So they would again, they're introverts, task oriented, so they're going to ask a question like, "Oh, do you mind letting us know how this data came about? Do you guys have information about a process control you ran?" And we typically send that information. So they'll ask various questions because what they're seeing is not matching what they're expecting. So there's a difference, right? They're seeing something from the data and they're not expecting that. So they want to know what's going on. Is it something on our side or is it something on their side? So they might say, "Oh, do you mind running the sample again? If at all possible, because they might give us 20 samples and one of them is off. So they might have us run that one sample and we'll say, sure, we won't charge them for it. We'll run it. And if the data, in my understanding opinion, when I look at it and it's the same within 5% of the original data I sent, I will send that data with a process control, which tells them, hey, we're within 5%. Something is probably, and I would be very nice in how I reply to them about the data. I would say, this is what we're seeing. Here's the process control that kind of confirms it. Maybe take a look at what's going on in your fab. Maybe something is going on there. I don't like to be accusatory or anything like that. I would just say, if you don't mind taking a look at what's happening on your end, and then they would say, sure, they're going to go look, and they would come back and probably say, we're going to send you 5 more samples from this machine to double check. So they would run 5 samples and send them to us. And what they would do is they would adjust and this is really cool, of the 5 samples, they may change something up 5%, 10%, 15%. They might go down 5, 10, 15. So they might do a grading of the implants and send it to us. And we would see that too, that change. And they wouldn't tell us what each sample is. I would have to run it blind. Again, I run my process control to tell me my machine is running correctly and everything is good. So the data that comes out of this is going to be accurate. So I'll send them my process control and the samples, and I'll notice on my end that, oh my God, like they went up 5% on this sample, then the next one's 10%, then this one goes down 5%, this one goes down 10%, and this one's right in the middle. So what they've done is change the variables on their end to see if we can actually detect that, and we do. And we send it to them, and then they go, oh, okay, we see what's going on our end. We see the issue. Now, if I had a German scientist, they would reply back to me the first time around and say, something's wrong with your system. Can you check it? We are seeing that everything on our side is working properly. Again, a very different approach from the 2 different cultures, but they're asking the same question. It's the same exact question. Is everything working on our end okay? If it is, then we need to go check our side of it on their fab. So that, again, so just so I can be clear that the Germans are more DC, they're more direct, and they're very task oriented. Okay. Very task oriented. So the D is very direct. It's a direct discussion in the emails, which is fine. It's not like, again, that's how we're trained not to get our feelings hurt. We don't take it personally. None of it is personal. And they're not being, again, when you talk to the Germans, if you meet with the German scientists, personally, and I have, in Germany, they're very proper. They're very considerate. They're very nice, but again, they're very direct. People can take that directness as being they're kind of being in your face, being some people might take it as they're being mean. Again, you cannot do that in our field when I was in semiconductor. So when I joined Greenwood Dental, and you guys started talking about disc and things like that, I connected the dots. Obviously, the D is this, the I is this, the S is this, the C is this, and the personalities I've dealt with my entire career for 20 years in semiconductor. We didn't use the letters, but we understood the personalities and how to deal with these personalities. So when I jumped into dentistry, I didn't need to learn how to do it. I just took the DISC, connected the dots, and I understood it. And I still didn't use that per se, that DISC. I just knew how to do it. So it's something I was trained in for 20 years. So it falls right into place. And I don't need to go, oh, this person's a D personality. I already, when I'm talking to somebody, I go, okay, I understand how to deal with this personality. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so just to verify for some of you guys, the viewers or the listeners that never stumbled on that model, a D personality D stands for dominance. So D personality is very extroverted, but very task oriented. It's opposite of the C, which is the analytical. It's introverted, task oriented. So they belong to the task orientation, where the I and S belongs to the people orientation. So the way you look at it is top and bottom. You categorize the groups as extroverted on the top, introverted on the bottom. And if you go to the left, you do task oriented, to the right, people oriented. So in your experience, the German scientists, so you guys are all scientists, so you guys all analytical, you process, that's what you're looking, the bottom line, or the end of the day, you're looking for data. But how you guys communicate, the style of communication was a little bit, with the Germans, they were very extroverted, like they were in your face, so like, okay, in our end, everything is fine, you guys got to check yourself. Where the Japanese, they're more introverted in their communication, where, okay, thank you very much, let's look at it, we'll get back to you, that kind of thing. And then you have, and also they are S. So I imagine as a German scientist, I'm dealing with a DI or ID, very extrovert, people oriented. They're not shy to get back to you and say, there's nothing wrong with our samples. You guys better check your data. Although they know, they're scientists, right? Data is data. So, but the style of communication is a little bit different. So take that coming into dentistry, you were subconsciously or indirectly, you were trained on the disc profile model, but you were not, labeling it as DISC. And that's why when you went from a semiconductor into a whole different position, like we were looking at you were looking at yourself in a very different capacity. You came from a scientist working with corporate, coming in as, a co-CEO or a business owner running dentistry. Of course, the dental client is different, in so many ways different than the semiconductor client. But the bottom line, it's all about information, right? People will buy the information. People will spend the money if they agree with the information that you deliver to them. So that's why you're a great closer. You're the best closer in the whole brand. You can close anything. And I think being your personality, what are you? You have ID at work, or IDC or DIC?
So let me, I took the test twice. I took it when I first joined. I was a DC.
You're supposed to take it every 5 years, which is, Yep.
I'm just going to give you everything real quick. I was a DC when I left semiconductor, and then 5-6 years later, I took it again, and I'm a DI. Okay. So what happened once I left semiconductor, the C kind of went away and my I came out. So in the dental industry, I'm not really doing any science or anything like that. So there's really, I do look at numbers and financials, but it's not that task oriented too much. It's not that deeply task oriented. So when I left semiconductor, I was a DC, which made sense. And that D, I just want to kind of circle back on the D part of my personality. whether back then or now, when I dealt with the Japanese, I had to tone down my D because I cannot come at them. Does not work. They'll shut down. They won't talk. So that's the reason why there was only a handful of us in the company, the entire company. And we had, a couple of hundred people, I think, when I worked there. We are, again, a handful of us that dealt with clients. The rest of the people in the company were mostly, I would say, they were S, Cs, and they weren't good communicators. They can run samples, crunch the data, send it out. And then I had various people doing that with the Japanese, but I was the liaison. So when they had a question, they would contact me. And not only for my data, but for other people's data, because they only wanted to deal with me and a few other people within the company. So there was, where I was in New Jersey at the time, there was a couple of people they dealt with. They were really good with the Japanese. And for example, I'll give you a great example. I visited Japan 3 times in 1 year, and because they invited me 3 times. So, which was an honor to be invited 3 times. Not many people get invited that often. So it was pretty amazing. The first time I went, I'll tell you a story. I toned down the D. I definitely have I in me, right? So again, that I is not good in Japan. So being like turned on constantly is a turn off for the Japanese. So when I went, I toned down the I, very definitely toned down the D. So when I talked to them, I would just be explaining data. We just have conversations with the clients, also with our Japanese counterparts, which were the ones that kind of took us. They're our company in Japan. They took us from client to client. Now I interacted with them like all day, every day when I was there. And then for that hour and a half when we're at the client, we're all communicating and, interacting with the client. Here's the cool thing. The Japanese are very, very much SC. They're task-oriented introverts, or introverted task-oriented. When I started to notice, this is very interesting, is they start to relax in front of you and smile more, and they drop their guard, basically, the Japanese. Then your eye can come up a little bit. It's like a volume. You can't turn it up all the way. You can turn it up a little bit. And then, you can throw out a couple of jokes, maybe, and then you'll start seeing that they'll come back and their eye starts to come out, which is very, very hard to get in Japan because that's not their personality. But what happens is they trust you, they like you, then their personality. Then what happened is, I believe in the first visit, and I was a little bit heavier back then. They used to call me Jumbo-san, which means, it was a very nice way to say I was big jumbo san. Like, so what they do is they put Ehab san as kind of a very nice way to kind of direct something to me. But when they said Jumbo-san, they would not say that obviously with a client, but they would say that to me as a joke, and I would kind of joke around. So again, their guard drops, their eye starts to come up, my eye starts to come up, and what happens is my eye keeps going up, their eye keeps going up, my eye keeps going up, their eye. So at the end of the visit, we're all joking and having fun with each other. We're actually hugging each other, which again touching is not a big thing in Japan, but at the end, we're shaking each other's hands, hugging each other. It's a sign of respect between us and them, and a sign that they trust me very, very much, that they would drop their guard and do these things that they would probably only do with their family members. Now, at home, they might be different. I don't know I'm sure they're very affectionate with their family, but at work, they're very, again, task-oriented introverts. At home, they might be eyes. Who knows? I'm not there with them. But again, this is kind of my take on a group of people. again, this is not only that it works with the Japanese, with the Germans, the Europeans. They may not accept you, but again, when you're with them longer and longer, they start to drop their guard. Their eye starts to come out. So if I were spending a little more time with this German client, we may go out to dinner, and we're chatting. We're at things now. We're not talking about work really as much. They drop their guard a little bit. Their eye starts to come up a little bit, and we start to communicate and have this nice rapport and we joke a little bit back and forth. So just the bottom line is, when you're speaking to somebody from another culture, another society, with another different type of personality, you can bring that eye up only when it's time. It's all timing. Again, it's an important timing thing. You can't dial up your eye with either the Japanese or the Germans, because they just won't like that. So it has to come up slowly. And what occurs is, when it comes up slowly, there's a trust factor that moves with it. If they're trusting you, they start to dial up their eye and start to kind of drop their guard and communicate. Now, this is the important thing that I bring to dentistry. I utilize this subconsciously. This is not a conscious thing. I'm not really thinking about it. It's very subconscious for me. So that's why when I talk to somebody, I can get them to drop their guard. It's just how I do it, and it's all timing. And if they don't want to drop their guard, this is another thing with patients. If they don't want to drop their guard, I'm good with that. We can then communicate on that professional level and keep that understanding going, and I can move through the treatment plan and, convince them in one way or the other, depending on how it works. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, you definitely tapped into a lot of many important points. Number one, understanding the culture. Number two is the old saying, reading the room. You need to know who you are talking to as far as personality is concerned. You can't just jump into a conversation in order to have or build a dialogue and be productive and have a productive and very effective conversation.
Yep.
And we talk about that a lot at work, and we teach our team that, almost every single day. Like, you can't just start talking to a person. You need to know the personality that you're talking to. Just like when you went to Japan, or when you are emailing or you're on the phone with a German scientist, everybody's scientist. And just same thing as when the patient, they're coming into our offices, they're looking for one thing, is how to change their smile, how to change their dental health. But how we are going to present that data and present the diagnosis and go one step further and say, hey, this is going to cost you X amount of money, and this is a really good investment because your mouth is worth it. Convincing them that it is worth it, it really takes a lot of these tools. So when you say, just to clarify also, when you say high extroverted, people oriented, they're very like party and huggy and touchy and storytelling. And that's, I think, what you're talking about in Japan, the culture of Japan. There is, the covenant of personal space. You cannot invade that personal space. And by the way, I'm sure you will agree with me. We're not body shaming, but you're very tall. You're like 6 feet tall, big guy being in Japan. And that's what Jumbo-san, when you say Jumbo-san, you're the big friend, basically. San is the guy. So it's a very, very casual term. And I just want to make sure that we are clear on that point. So exactly the same, but you also dealt with Russian scientists, and you worked with a Russian scientist who's really, really a good friend of yours. And can you share with us the difference in the approach, that a story that I always laugh about, when you guys were on the same phone call, were you guys talking to the Japanese or you guys talking to an American client, right?
we're talking to American client. I want to come back to that in a second. I want to give you guys a little story. I gave presentations in like Europe and Germany, and I gave one in Japan. Now I'm speaking to the Germans in the presentation, and they'll, you're going through the slides, and they'll stop you and ask a question. They don't care. They'll just interrupt. Nicely. It's not like they'll just jump up and say something. They'll raise their hand. They'll say, "You have a question." Of course, I'll answer that question as I'm going. Now, this is the thing I have to, when you're given a presentation, you have to know the personality and not be offended that they stopped you and asked a question. Now, the opposite side in Japan, they won't stop me. Okay. They won't stop me. This is the cool part. They'll wait till the end of the whole presentation, and it'll take me back to maybe second, third slide and ask a question. Maybe the fifth slide to ask a question, the eighth slide to ask a question. So they'll make me jump back, which is fine. It's just the way they do it. But now here's the cool thing. In Germany, when they're asking questions, they ask it in English. When you're in Japan, you have an interpreter there, and the Japanese scientist or engineer would say something, the interpreter and the interpreter would come and interpret the question to me, and I would give them the answer, and they would answer them. Then about 20 minutes into this question answer session, all of a sudden, the Japanese guy that I'm talking to, or the group that I'm talking to, will start speaking English to me. So it's not like they're being rude, that they're not wanting to answer me in English. They're very careful and measured in how they answer. They don't want to make a mistake. But when they saw that the rapport was good, their guard drops, then they can answer in English. And I won't, obviously, it may be broken English. It may not be correct English. It's fine. I don't correct them. I just answer the question. This is the difference. This is the thing that we have to be careful with. So I'm going to take you back to the story with my friend from Russia. We're on this phone call, and he's an expert in something called TXRF. It's a machine that's used to give you information on a silicon wafer that's about the size, or maybe 1.5 times the size of a large record from a record player. And what it does at TXRF, it gives you just information about metal contamination and the spot it looks at. So the spot is about 10 millimeters in diameter. And in that spot, it'll tell you all the different metals, nickel, iron, whatever it might be that might be present there. Now, you can utilize this machine in something called a mapping mode, which it takes spots of 10 millimeter and goes from one spot to another, to another, to another, across all the entire 300 millimeter wafer. And then it gives you like a heat map of, there's this much iron in this area, or this much nickel in this area, right? And it's nice because it doesn't give you 1 point. It gives you maybe hundreds of points. These hundreds of points is what maps it, and it gives them an idea of where their contamination is coming from in that region. So when they lay that wafer down on their end, when they put that down, they're going to say, oh, the upper right corner of that wafer, this is what's happening. We see why it's happening like that, because when the beam is coming in, here's a great example. When the beam is coming in, it might hit the side of the chamber and knock off some iron onto the wafer. So when the beam is trying to implant and it's moving across, it might clip the side of the chamber and hit the side of the chamber, knock off some iron, and it'll come down onto the wafer. So that's kind of, they'll say, oh my God, they have to adjust the alignment of the beam. We just have to move it, center it. So now when it's coming and it's implanting on the wafer, it's now not clipping any part of that chamber. So it's coming kind of dead center, and the wafer's moving and it's implanting. And so they'll send us a wafer again and say, can you check this? And there'll be no metals. Now, that's kind of the background of what we're talking about here. Now we're on this call, and our company that we started and we kind of combine with another small company, and they want to win the business from the larger company to do TXRF mapping. Now, they don't have TXRF. They're going to use a TXRF and borrow time inside of Fab that they have a really good relationship with. Okay. So not a problem. So we're on this phone call, and my Russian friend is like, he got already a map that they sent, and it was horrible. I mean, it was completely wrong. They ran it at the bigger company, and they saw it was pretty clean. They sent us that same wafer to that fab. They ran it, and it was completely full of iron everywhere. Okay. It was just supposedly dirty everywhere. And what had happened was they're just not calibrated. The system is not calibrated for mapping. And in order to calibrate this system, we have to disrupt the fab, send in an engineer from this Japanese company that makes this machine, this TXRF. They have to go in for a couple of days and sit there and calibrate the placard, or the record player, basically. Has to be level. We got to make sure everything is set up correctly. It's a deep process. Now, they did not want to do that, this fab, because they need this. They can't bring that system down because they need it to check, 6 points on a wafer, and that's all they needed. We needed it to do mapping. They didn't care about that. They did not care that we needed mapping. So they told us, either figure it out with what we got, with what they have at the moment, without the engineer coming in to calibrate. We said, okay. We run it. Horrible. Now we're on this phone call now, and my Russian colleague is like, we can't run this wafers for the client. It's going to be wrong. And I told him, okay, well, that's fine. If you see that it's wrong, well, let's communicate that with our Texas group and the client. So we're on the phone call, and my colleague is like, they're coming back like, what's wrong? Our Texas group, our colleagues down there, like, what's wrong? Why don't we just, run the samples for them? But you're going to run it. It's going to be incorrect, and you're just going to look bad. So he's on this call, and he's fuming now at this point. Within a few minutes, he was fuming because they were not accepting what he's saying when he's the expert, and they didn't care. They just wanted to run samples and make money. Now, this is the problem, where we have to be accurate in our business in semiconductor. So he's on there, he's arguing with them, and his voice starts to get louder and louder. And I'm over here. Now, we're not on a conference call like on Zoom or anything. They can't see us, or over the phone. So I kind of tap him and I say, okay, let's, bring down the volume. And then he calms down and he starts to ramp back up again. I can see it. I hit the mute button, and he's like, he's at 100% now. He's telling them, like, basically they're stupid. And I'm like, he's on mute right now. And he looks at me after he goes through this whole 1 minute, like, dialogue, this monologue, basically. And he looks at me, and I go, okay, I've muted you. Are you ready to talk to them a little bit more professionally? He's like, yeah. So I unmute him, and I can see him. He starts to ramp up. I hit him a mute again, and he goes, he goes right up to 100%. And he's like, attack, 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 attack for like a minute. And he calms down because he thinks he got everything across. And he finally calms down. I look at him, I go, okay, you're on mute still. Okay, you ready to do this correctly now? Okay, ready? Okay. So I unmute it, and he starts to kind of get the information across. And I'm telling, I'm going like this. Keep it steady. Keep it steady. And he gets it across. Now, again, our Texas colleagues go, why can't we just go ahead and run the samples? He just explained to you why. He gets upset again. It's like a full circle. We're just circling around. So at the end of the conversation, he got his point across. They didn't get it. We hang up. They call me, and they said, what's going on over there? I'm letting them know, like, okay, here's the deal. He's not going to put his name on it. He's not going to sign off on any of this data until this system gets calibrated and we test it with a clean wafer and make sure it's accurate. They're like, why? He's the expert. And yeah, he is the expert. He explained to you, but you weren't understanding what he was saying is like, you can do whatever you want, but he's not going to sign off on anything. His name is not going to be signed on the report when it goes out. You guys can sign off on it. And they're like, why? He's the expert. They're like, okay, well, if he's the expert, you need to listen to him and calibrate this machine. If you don't want to listen to him, that's fine. And they're like, well, we noticed that, you guys were cutting in and out. Were you muting him? I said, yeah. And they're like, why were you muting him? I was pretty honest with them. I was like, brutally honest. I was like, he thought you guys were not getting it and you were stupid. Basically is what was being felt on my end. And he was basically saying you were stupid up to the point of saying you were stupid. So what he was trying to get across was like, I'm not going to put my name on this. You can if you want. In the end, he was basically, I'm done. I'm not talking anymore to these guys on the call. And then we were done and we hung up, and that's when they called me. I said, you're more than welcome to run the way you want to do it. That's fine. But we're not involved with it. And this was like going to be $500,000 to $1 million worth of business, which would have been a lot of money for the company. But they just weren't he was not going to do it. And we ended up losing the business. They went back to the old company, which was the reason why they came to us is because the old company, the system was down for repairs and it was down for too long. So they were looking for alternative analysis locations. So they came to us, but we weren't fast enough in that we did not calibrate the system. We had time. We had weeks to calibrate the system, but again, that fab was not going to allow us in with an engineer to calibrate. So,
wow, that's crazy. Like I'm sitting here listening to it. I'm sweating because I can't even imagine. Like it sounds like he's like a DC. So you guys are all scientists, right? But your style is more like an eye, kind of telling the story and adapting to, what you were receiving. But he was not even willing to adapt. It was my way or the highway. It's black and white. And I get it. I mean, it is a reputation and it's a liability, accountability. I'm not going to put my name on this if they're not going to do it in a certain way. And I think it sounds like you agreed with both ends, but you disagreed with the delivery way of how he delivered it. Like he could have been a little bit more diplomatic to gain the business, but he didn't care. For him, it was a lot more important not signing his name on something that not done the way he believed it should be done than trying to, kind of facilitate more communication, trying to gain it, gain the business. And this is a perfect example of the dominant personality, my way or the highway. They are willing to accept change, but it has to be controlled change. They're on their own terms, otherwise they're not going to change. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. The semiconductor industry, you getting your PhD after graduate school, of course, any professional graduate school, we don't learn any of that until we hit the ground running and we get hit by life and circumstances and events and episodes from other people that don't really care what we think. And we either, think smart about it and say, okay, if I want to gain that person trust, or I want to gain that person business, or have, like I said, a productive, effective communication or dialogue, not a monologue, right? I need to change my way. And that's a difference between adaptability or willing to adapt and not willing to adapt and not being limited. Our motto or the whole purpose of these episodes is, mastering an unlimited mindset by eliminating limited beliefs. But that was his belief system. His belief system, if not done this way, I'm not putting my name on it, and that's it. And we deal with that with the patient in dentistry too. And that's why we train after we diagnose a condition. Now we have to sell the treatment in order for the patient to get healthy. We have to match that selling style to the patient's belief system. You know, if they don't believe in, like my friend, he didn't believe in the other company the way it's doing it, he's not going to buy it, right? And the same thing with a patient. If we don't present the solution or the treatment of their diagnosis or the solution of their situation that matches a belief system, I don't believe in root canals. I'm not going to pay for it. I don't believe in implants. I'm not going to pay for it. I don't believe in that filling. I want a crown. I'm not going to pay for it. So, and we learn that customers or consumers, they will pay for only what they believe to see value in, right? So your friend didn't see the value in that conversation. It's like, it's not going to happen, right? Same thing we deal with our patient, but go ahead.
I can want to throw something out there. There was there's kind of information prior to this meeting. For about a week, they were sending data back and forth. He's saying that's not good, no good, no good. Then they're like they forced a call on him, even though he's telling them in emails it's not going to work. So they forced a call, thinking if they cornered him on this phone call, this is the problem. This was their problem. This is their mistake. They thought that by cornering him on this call, they're going to coerce him and convince him, the expert, to go ahead and say, okay, yeah, sure, we'll run it. I'll agree and I'll sign off on it. He's not going to do that. And that's where I agree with him. I agreed with them that, like, I'd love to get this business. I agree with them. There's not a problem with that. That was a given. He even agreed with that. But unless we do it the right way, now it's not going to be good, because they're going to be paying us and we're sending them incorrect data, and they're going to know that the data. So that's going to tarnish the reputation of the company. This part is where they were blinded by the money. They did not care or think about the tarnishing of their reputation. We tried to tell them. I even told them that on that follow-up phone call. I'm like, this is your reputation. Don't do this. You're going to give them incorrect data. They're going to go to the bigger company when the machine comes back up, and they'll never send us samples for TXRF or for anything, because why would they trust us on any type of analysis if we could not get this right? And we're telling them it's right. We're saying, hey, we're the experts. You know, my colleagues, one of the top 5 people in the world that did the TXRF mapping, he's signing off on it. How is that possible? He's lying then. Because so he used to work at that bigger company, for years they dealt with him, this client. So they know him. So if he signed off on it, that means he's become this kind of company yes man. Yes man, and saying, I'm just gonna agree with the company and say, hey, to heck with the data. It didn't matter. We just want to make money. So that was him. So taking this to dental right now. Now, when I am sitting in front of a patient, they're not convinced. I'm not going to force them to accept treatment. We'll go through condition again. We'll discuss the treatment, and I might bring the doc in, the dentist in, to kind of review it again with them clinically, because they're the experts. I don't like to speak outside of my wheelhouse. So again, I'm not going to force somebody to do a treatment. I'm just going to work with them until they understand the condition, how important it is. Because if the condition isn't, if it's not alarming to them, and it's alarming to the dentist, and the dentist is not conveying that to them, then me going in there, it's not gonna. I'm closing on something that they have understood as being something really big. Decay. I've got decay all the way close to my nerve. They're going to need to go in and clean it out. Maybe a root canal is needed, a crown. These are discussions we have with the patient, and unless they believe it, Because they might say, oh, why don't you just do a filling? Oh, I don't feel any pain. Why are you even talking to me about this? Well, I have to go back to, step one, understanding the condition. I have to bring the dentist back in. They have to explain to them, well, you can see the x-ray. There's a big shadow. It's right up to the nerve. And so they have to go through that again. They have to convince the patient of the condition before we even talk about treatment. So again, 95% condition, 5% treatment. If we're just talking 10% condition, 90% treatment, you're not going to go anywhere with this. So we have to train the dentist when they join us. They don't learn this in school. I don't think you can, clarify on this, Dr. Slava, but I don't think they're trained in school to, definitely not trained in school for personality profiles. So, and I don't think they're trained in 95% condition, 5% treatment. So you can please feel free, but this is kind of the way I see things. If the treatment or if the condition isn't there, they're not going to buy it. They're not going to buy the treatment. So if they're not buying into the condition, they're not going to buy into the treatment for sure. 100%. I'm saying this right now to all the dentists out there. If they don't buy into the condition of decay, cracked tooth, pain is pain. So if they're in pain, they bought into the condition. That's easy. When you have somebody in pain, all bets are off the table. They want to get out of pain. Whatever you're telling them, as long as they're an ethical dentist, whatever you're telling them, they're going to go with. Oh my God, I need a root canal? Great, let's do it. You need a crown, build up a crown? Yes, do it. Because the structure, integrity of the tooth from the root canal is going to be compromised. So you need a build up and a crown it so you can really protect that investment. Remember, these guys are investing in that tooth it's going to cost a few $1,000s to do this root canal, build up, crown. So they have to really, really trust you, and that trust factor. This is another point where Dr. Slava has patients now that trust her. I don't want to say blindly, but let's just say it's that. They'll trust her blindly. She'll say, oh, you need to do a crown here, a crown there. She may not even spend much time on a x-ray explaining it. She might just say, oh, see that? There's a crack here. There's some decay. Great, doc, fix it. So go ahead, Dr. Slava. I'm going to let you kind of really go deep into this a little bit more.
No, actually, we're almost reaching the end of our hour, but I don't think we'll have time to. That's a whole science by itself. But I do agree with you 100%. And the reason I've been in dentistry for 27 years, you were in semiconductor for about 20 years. People trusted you because you're consistent. You were consistent in the servicing them. You were consistent with the way your communication style. You're consistent with data producing. Yeah. So consistency we always teach produces trust, and trust produces comfort and confidence in that person taking care of you, whether it's your samples or your analysis, your data report, selling them the ideas like this is the way we're going to run the analysis. And the same thing with me. So you touched upon that, telling the story, just like that company did not see the value of how your friend was talking to them. It's like, I'm not going to invest in that. I mean, it's not even worth my money. And they pulled the account. Right, where your friend did not see the value. He saw more in the value of him being right and him being like, this is my reputation. I'm not going to sign on that. So, but it's all about the style of delivery in order to communication. That's really, really important. And that's what we teach. But tapping into, how we train and, we're going to need another episode for that. And that's why we're very, picky on choosing the right personality for the right position in our brand, in our company. And I just want to remind you guys, for our viewers and our listeners, that when we say personality profile, we're not profiling anybody. It's the personality style. So just to wrap things up, just remember this tool. The easiest way to look at it top of the chart is extroverted, bottom of the chart is introverted, to the left is task-oriented, to the right is people-oriented. And it's a really fun game to play if you have a favorite, TV show like Friends, Seinfeld. You can see all these successful TV shows or successful, famous movies. Really, those characters like The Horrible Bosses. It's a perfect movie that has all 4 personalities of the DISC. So it's a really fun game, and that's how I trained Ehab to practice on it, is to watch his favorite movie, and we'll stop the movie and we say, okay, what do you think that personality? If you notice, every movie, every TV show has all 4 personality and the combination of 4. Now, also, the final reminder is every single person has all personalities. Those are the 4 hats that we wear, and there are different levels of every single personality style. There's low, medium, and high. But I'm sure we have to have other episodes to talk about it. We haven't even scratched the surface with that. But that's a very, very important tool if you are a business owner and you are struggling in finding the right fit for the right position that you are trying to hire for. You gotta learn this personality style and practice it, and have that interviewer or that candidate take that test before you even hire them. And they have to take a 10-minute test. It's online. It's wicked easy. And you have to remind them, take the test as if you are at work, whether you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a dentist, you're an admin, you're a manager, you're a director, you're a chief of the fire department or whatever it is. They have to remember to take the test while they are at work with that title, not when they are with their friends or with their family or on vacation or what have you. So anyways, thank you so much for listening and watching. We really, really enjoy this a lot, Dr. Ehab, and I'm sure we're going to come back for more. And I hope you come back for more. And as a reminder, these episodes are uploaded every single Wednesday on Apple and Spotify, and also they're available for you to watch as videos on our YouTube channel, The Greenwood Dental Partners. If you have any topics that you would like us to cover, remember, we can't do this without your support. So please share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss any episode. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next time. This is Slava the Jordanian.